Thank you, Esther.
We look
Thank
so
you,
much the
Abraham.
same.
I have a few questions. First one. When I was very young, I lost my mom. I mean, she croaked. And every
We
time...
like that disrespectful term, since there is no death.
So a few times I went to see some mediums, and they always told me that, oh, your mom is right next to you, she's always with you. Yeah. And for many years, I haven't had the chance to ask that again. So is she still around with me?
It's such a wonderful thing to come to know that. Words don't teach, and so we can say, as you've heard before, but yes, of course, always, always, always. But these are just words. You have to come to this place of really knowing it, of really, really knowing it, before you know it. That's quite a twist of words, isn't it? You got to know it, and then you'll know it. Next. You have to have experiences that help you know it. And for most of you, that means things have to sort of sneak up on you a little bit. In other words, when you are not blocking it with your "I lost my mother" flawed premise, then since she's not lost, since she's aware all the time and offering thoughts and so forth, then at a moment of not blocking it, you get a little glimpse of it. But then what most people do when they get that glimpse, they start feeling the absence of them, because your relationship is different than the way it was, but it's even better if you will let it be. Your mother is intertwined with all of the resources of source energy and completely aware of you and a part of your inner being, and knowing where you stand in relationship to everything that you want, and not wanting to create your reality for you. She's not pointing at you. Your mother didn't point at you. We didn't pick you because your mother said pick him. We're going to leave you alone after a little while, but you may have been inspired to that because it's so helpful to this conversation. It is your attraction, you see. So do you have time for a quick story? This is a Jerry story. Esther's Jerry made his transition, so you might like this because she has all kinds of these experiences. But the first experiences she had was when she was doing her first editing of the monthly or the weekly or the twice monthly tape program, and they always worked together to do that. And she was feeling sorry for herself because she was on her own about it, and she was feeling insecure about it too at first. So she sat down with everything around her like they always did, and she had her headphones on, and she began listening to the material, reaching for the pieces that she thought would be most significant, and then working to make it fit in the time allotted space on the cassette in those days, or the CD. And once she sort of warmed into it and relaxed into it and began hearing it and got into vibrational alignment with who she really is, she began feeling certainty about what to do. She began flipping to different sequences. It didn't even make any sense to her. She could skip whole portions and move over there, and she discovered that she had the ability to do what he had always done. And she said, you know, when you were hanging around the house with me, or the bus with me, or the hotel room with me, or wherever we were always together, you were over there and I was over here, and you were doing what you do and I was doing what I do, and we got together a lot and we had a lot of fun together, but we were doing what we were doing, and now we're doing all of it together. Everything, when someone is focused within you, the intertwining of thought is the most intimate, delicious knowing and understanding. In other words, no separation at all. When you are blended at a thought level, that's a relationship, you see. That's a relationship. That's a relationship unlike you ever experienced. That's bigger and more whole and more wonderful. You see what we're getting at? So here's the story that we want to tell you. You'll like this. Many years ago, Jerry and Esther found what they thought was an art piece in a gallery somewhere. It was a Kuan Yin Buddha, and it was tall, it was white porcelain, it was beautiful. And they did not choose it because of its religious connotations. They chose it because it was spatially perfect for where they wanted to put it. So they thought. So they brought it home. They carried it from place to place. They had it for a long time. And one day, you may have heard this story, we tell it from time to time, Esther was dusting the etagere that it was on, put her dust cloth on the top shelf, and it was just sort of the last straw, and the shelf fell off of its little peg and crashed down and crashed down and crashed down, and everything on the etagere was broken. And that was one of the things that broke. Jerry heard the crash from the other room and called, "Don't move," because he knew Esther was in bare feet, and she went, and everything was broken around her. The shelf sticking right in the floor. It had fallen with such velocity. Really heavy shelves. And for years, they looked for the replacement. Every time they'd go to San Francisco, they'd go to Chinatown, they'd look for it. And Jerry would say, "No, too short, not right, not the right face. No, that's not the one, that's not the one, that's not the one." They looked and 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 looked. That was since 1994. Looked and 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 looked. Never did find it. And so the other day, Esther's looking for a piece of art for her new house, and she wants one of those painted Asian screens, the panels, and hopefully an antique one. San Antonio's not the best place to look for such a thing. So a friend said, "You might try this place." And so Esther went to this place, and there was nothing like that there. But she met a very nice man who owned the place, and he said, "Wait, I might have something that you might be interested in, but we would have to frame it. We would have to plan it and frame it, but I think you might like it." And so he said, "Follow me." And so she followed him into his office, and he got on a ladder, and way up on a shelf, he's pulling these rolls of things down. And Esther turns around, and there is this Kuan Yin. There it is, the one. And so she says to him, yeah, I want all of that, but I really want that." And he said, "I'm sorry, that's not for sale." And Esther said, "Oh, I understand, but I really want that." And he said, "I'm sorry, it's not for sale." So they spent some time with the art, rolling it out, measuring it, deciding, thinking about how it would be, making sort of temporary plans about it. And then, as Esther was getting ready to leave, he said, "By the way, I've decided I'm going to sell that to you." He said, "It was a gift from me to my mother, and my mother has passed, and she's telling me I should sell it to you." And Esther said, "That's because my dead husband and your dead mother are in cahoots." And he nodded. He gets it. So Esther didn't take it because they hadn't decided on a price of anything, and she left, and some time went by as he was making the plans about it, and then he calls her and says that he has someone who is doing the art, and it will be ready on such and such a day. And so they make plans for the delivery of it, and Esther's really eager about it, and then the art isn't ready, and so he calls and says, "Can we put it off till next week?" And Esther says, "Yes, that'll be really fine with me. I'll be back." And so the day comes that he's delivering it, and Esther gets a text from her granddaughter that says, "Happy birthday, Grandma." And Esther thought, "Oh yeah, it's my birthday." Well, Jerry and Esther never celebrated anything like that. They just celebrated every day. Jerry never bought Esther anything for her birthday or for any other day, because he didn't want to be fulfilling an obligation. He wanted to always come from a sincere desire to do it. And it's just the relationship they had. And after 5 years of hating him on every holiday, she grew accustomed to it and came to like it too. So the doorbell rings, and here's the delivery man, and he has this statue in his arms, and he hands it through the door to Esther, and she tells him how to go down the other driveway, and she'll go open the garage door. And she's prepared the table with the mirror and the light and the stand that it's going to sit on. It's been there for a few weeks now. And so she's walking down the hallway, and she sets the statue on the platform, and she hears Jerry in his clearest of words saying, "And you said I never got you anything for your birthday." Some would chalk it off to coincidence, but Esther knows what a setup. Oh, Jerry could hold a punchline like no other. Esther can't, but Jerry could. As she thought about how she went there, he knew that's where that was. That's why she was guided there. And she found other stuff that is fine, but it's not why she went. And then it wasn't ready. And then it was delivered on her birthday. It's a really nice setup. And we want to say to all of you, it's child's play. Do you know how known you are, how understood you are, and how loved you are? And these people that you have known are in on all of that big time, you see. You just got to know it. You just got to trust it. You just got to watch for it. And the thing that Esther loved so much about that is she didn't see it coming. She didn't see it coming. When it got there, it was big and it was real and it was sure. And Esther doesn't need any affirming that Jerry's around. If you can see energy, you can probably see him now. He never leaves her side, and he really likes these gatherings. And your mother is the same, you see. But you've got to put yourself in a place of being receptive to that, so that you will know in a way that you will never have to ask someone else, what do you think about that?
Okay.
Enough?
I got it.